Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about a guy named Francis Perkins. We're going to talk about Jamestown, the early colonists from England into America. What will eventually turn into the United States, this colonies. These guys, not the Spanish people in Florida, and not the natives that lived throughout the what is now considered the United States. So anyways, here we go. There was a letter written by a man named Francis Perkins, who wrote to a friend in England on March 28th, the year 1608. And that's this. You could look up these documents and get a hold of these historical documents and check them out yourself. Read word for word in the Old English. Check it out. This letter somewhat describes what life was like in early colonial America, including what life was like after the first American fire in the English colonies. It was a pretty rough time for those dudes. Like I was saying in other videos about the fire. Well, here's a little bit more in-depth about it. Okay, but anyways, this Francis Perkins, he tells his friend to put in a good word for him so he can be elected on the council in Jamestown, in which in turn would help him pay off his debts, assuming he wanted to pay his friend back, since the opening of the letter was of Perkins' gratitude towards his friend's generosity of some whatever sort. He mentioned how the council was of competent and intelligent people, and that he felt equal to them, and therefore he wanted to join them. He was like, I'm smart like those dudes. Put me on. Put me on. Well, he first describes his trip to America. Let's get a little bit of that. It's kind of interesting. He described his trip mentioning stopping in the American island of Santo Domingo in the West Indies. They traded with the natives, in which they referred to as the savages. You know how it is. We traded our spears for the savages, corn, or something. You know how they say. They spent a full day visit in the island, on that island, trading. And the natives came aboard the ship, as you know, completely naked, just like in the other videos with Columbus. Completely naked, bringing things to trade, such as potatoes, pineapples, bananas, and types of bread called cassandra. And they also brought some parrots, cocks, hens, linen, and other types of things that they gave in exchange for things the English traded with them. So it's the same thing they were trading with Columbus and all them, with like birds and stuff. Like they brought parrots and all this kind of stuff, and cotton. And the English, they were trading iron hatchets, saws, knives, rosaries, little bells, and other small trifles that the natives seemed amazed by. And why would the natives want rosaries? But anyways, they traded it with them. They're like, here, there's a thing we prayed to. And they're like, yeah, looks cool to me. I'm going to break it apart, make earrings out of it. They then spent a week visiting different islands until they made their way to Jamestown. They were accompanied by a ship of 40 passengers who they lost sight of in a fog, but have eventually caught up into each other. It's a pretty crazy time, because they're always losing each other in fog in those days. Can you imagine driving around a boat with no GPS? When he arrived at Jamestown and they had disembarked on a Monday, January 2nd, 1608, he mentioned that James River was wide and full of oyster banks, and the trees and forests are full onto the banks. The trees are just coming right up to him. They're like, man, where's the sidewalk? He said the weather was warm at first, but the cold was so bad that it froze everyone's feet. And he mentioned that the cold was so bad that it almost froze the whole river from one side to the other. And they took some, and then they went on top of this frozen river, and they busted it up and took some, because they seen in the river some frozen fish underneath the ice. And they're like, look at fish, man. We're gonna get some fish out of here. Just give me your hammer. For what? I'm gonna break this ice up, get the fish. Really? Yeah, put that fire out, dude. Wait till we're on land. So they busted these frozen fish from the top of the river and fried them up. And he said they were so good and fat. And the oil that came from them, the grease that came from the fish, they didn't even need to add anything. The fish cooked perfect. They fried perfectly the fish from the top of the frozen ice. Anyways, Francis Perkins wrote, then he wrote of the fire that happened on the Thursday, January 5th, about 4 days later. on 1608, his 4th day in Jamestown. He said that all the houses were burned down, even the storehouse that held the munition and supplies, leaving only 3 unburned. Everything that Francis Perkins had owned had been burned, except the mattress that was still on board the ship that they arrived on. They're like, we left it there, good thing, because everything's burned here now. He and his son that he had with him, they were left in a foreign land with no food, no house. That the fire burned everything, and it was freezing outside, and their toes were frozen, and they were trying to bust fish out of the ice, but there was only a couple there. They were kind of hungry, frozen, cold, and looking at everything burned on the ground. They're like, man, wish we could go home. Perkins writes how grateful he is that they were at peace with the Powhatan, the natives of the area, in which they traded red copper to the Powhatan for food. He mentioned that the Powhatan liked the red copper. So the Powhatan then, instead of trading the corn, showed the settlers how to use the corn to plant more of it for themselves. So the colonists cleared the trees in the big areas in need to plant the corn. Like, hey, we know how to do this now. Let's cut these trees down. Thanks, Indians. We got it. The Powhatan also showed the colonists how the natives caught fish. And Perkins writes how grateful he is of the natives, the Powhatan. So part of this letter, Perkins writes about the animals in the area. Well, before the fire, right? He mentions the animals in the area. He said, there are many little animals here with the skins of fine fur, and if I come across any, I will send them for you and your friends to see. He says that there was a lot of fodder in the area for animals to feed off of, such as pigs and goats. And among the fodder, there were herbs and strawberry trees. He then explained that they lacked everything after the fire. The fire even burned all of their clothing, in which Perkins asked his friend to send any clothes that he can, since everything he had was burned. It's like, I got no second shirt, I got no underwear, I got no socks. Dude, send me something, anything. Perkins was obviously depressed when he wrote that letter. He and his son had lost everything in the fire, and he wrote how he missed his friends and his wife back in England. His wife's name was Catherine, and he told his friend to tell his wife if he sees her. He's like, hey, tell my wife what I said and what's going on with me. Because he said that he didn't have enough ink or paper to write any of the letters to his friends or his wife at that point. Life wasn't easy in early America, especially after the fire of 1608. The first American fire. So anyways, that's enough for this video. Just covering a historical person, a historical document, and a historical time, and historical epics. Fires and stuff like that. Natives. Anyways, that's it. I'm not going to ask anybody to subscribe because I'm sure they know how to do it already. If you don't know how to do it, go to school. All right. Adios.